Hi ladies, Mr. O'Sullivan. Today we're going to be looking at lesson 4-10, finding solutions to polynomials, day 2. So we're going to be putting together two more factoring techniques that we learned about in this unit, basic trinomial factoring and difference of two squares. These questions are a little more difficult because it's the end of our unit, so please make sure you understand how to do these problems, and we're doing them on Zoom. So if you have any questions, email myself, Ms. Townsend, or Ms. Jimenez. Today's learning target is I can solve a polynomial equation by using different factoring techniques. We're going to focus on the basic trinomial factoring, and then we're going to look at difference of two squares, or dots and dots. Okay? So in solving a quadratic equation, because that's what we're doing, we're not solving linear equations, we're solving quadratic equations. What we're going to do is we want to put the equation in standard form. Everything on one side, 0 on the other side. So we want to make sure our equation is going to be equal to 0. If it's not equal to 0, we have to get it into that form. Then we're going to factor. Then we're going to set each factor equal to 0. So this is when we do t time. And then you're going to solve each mini equation after setting each factor to 0. That's the easiest part. The hardest part is putting together all this information. So let's do some basic trinomial factoring where a is equal to 1. And again, before we even go any further, we just need to make sure everything is set equal to 0. So the first thing I'm going to ask myself is this equation set equal to 0? I have x squared plus 5x minus 50 equal to 0. So it's equal to 0. I can go ahead and start factoring. I am looking for two numbers that add up to a positive 5 and multiply to a negative 50. So if I look, I'm going to pull up my explain everything. Where are my factor sheets? That's annoying. Okay, so Safari. Factor pairs from 1 to 100. Where is explain everything? Here it is. Perfect. Okay, so I want to go to the number 50 because I want all the numbers that multiply to 50. So I'm going to go to the number 50. And the number 50 is right here. So I want 50, 1 and 50, 2 and 25, and 5 and 10. And I'm going to draw my diamond. So my diamond is going to be multiplied to a negative 50, add up to a positive 5. So negative 50 goes up top because I want to multiply to it, and my 5 goes downstairs because I want to add to it. So if I look, 1 and 50 I know will never give me a 5. 2 and 25 definitely won't give me a 5. So I know it has to be my 5 and my 10. So let's play around with our 5 and our 10. I know 5 times 10 is 50, but if you look, you want a negative 50. So what we're going to do is we're going to make one of these numbers negative. I'm going to make my 10 negative. 5 times negative 10 is negative 50, but 5 plus negative 10 is not a positive 5, it's a negative 5. And if you look, you want a positive 5. So that doesn't work, so I'm going to make my 5 negative. So negative 5 times 10 is negative 50. Negative 5 plus 10 is 5. It works. So my factors are x minus 5 and x plus 10. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set these factors equal to 0 by using t time. And how t time works is I just draw a t in between my two factors, and I set both of these factors equal to 0. So I have x minus 5 equals 0, x plus 10 equals 0. How do I get rid of a minus 5? I add 5. Add 5, add 5. Boom, I get x equals 5. How do I get rid of my plus 10? I subtract 10. 0 minus 10 is negative 10. That's your final answer. X equals 5 and x equals negative 10. Let's go on to our next example. X squared minus 3x minus 16 equals negative 6. The first thing I ask myself, is it equal to 0? No, it's not equal to 0. It's equal to a negative 6. So you have to ask yourself, how do I get rid of that negative 6? I add 6 to both sides of my equation. So if I look, I get x squared minus 3x, negative 16 plus 6. If you don't know it, use a calculator. Don't use your phone calculator, use Desmos. I get a negative 10. And that's equal to 0. I want to find two numbers that add up to negative 3 and multiply to negative 10. So I'm going to go to my factor pairs for 10, and they are 1 and 10 and 2 and 5. Draw the diamond. Negative 10 goes up top. Negative 3 goes downstairs. So I want to find two numbers that multiply to a negative 10 and add up to negative 3. We know that it's definitely not going to be our 1 and our 10, so it has to be our 2 and our 5. The reason why I know it's not a 1 and a 10 is because I know 1 and 10 will never give me a negative 3. But I can play around with my 2 and 5 to give me a negative 3. So I know 2 times 5 is a positive 10, but I want a negative 10. So one of these numbers has to be a negative. Let's make our 2 negative. Negative 2 times 5 is negative 10, but negative 2 plus 5 is 3. I want a negative 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to make our 5 negative. So 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. 2 plus negative 5 is negative 3. Those are our factors. So I have x plus 2 times x minus 5 equals 0. Now I'm going to t-time it. And I have x plus 2 equal to 0. X minus 5 equal to 0. How do I get rid of my plus 2? I subtract 2. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides of my equation. And I get x equals negative 2. And then how do I get rid of my minus 5? I'm going to add 5. So I get x equals 5. And that's your final answer. X equals negative 2 and x equals 5. Let's go on to our next example. I have x squared minus 84 equals 2x minus 4. Is it equal to 0? No, it's equal to 2x minus 4. So you have to ask yourself, how do I get everything to the other side? So if you want, you can be adventurous and just get rid of everything at once, or you can take your time. I'm going to be adventurous. I have to ask myself, how do I get rid of a positive 2x? I subtract 2x. Subtract 2x. How do I get rid of a minus 4? I add 4. Add 4. Cancel, cancel. So there's nothing to combine with my x squared, so I'm going to just write x squared. Nothing to combine with my minus 2x, so I'm going to write minus 2x. And then negative 84 plus 4 is a minus 80. That's equal to 0. So now I can factor it. I want to find two numbers that add up to negative 2 and multiply to negative 80. So I go to my factor pair sheet, and 80's got a bunch of combinations. So I'm going to write the number 80. I've got 1 and 80, 2 and 40, 4 and 20, 5 and 16, and 8 and 10. So I want to find two numbers that multiply to negative 80 and add up to negative 2. So if you look, you need to figure it out. So which of these is going to give me a negative 2? Definitely won't be my 1 and my 80, too big. Definitely won't be my 2 and 40, still too far away. 4 and 20 and 5 and 16 are the exact same thing. They're just too far away from each other. So it's got to be my 8 and my 10. Here's the issue. 8 times 10 is positive 80. I want a negative 80. So we got to make one of these numbers a negative. Let's make our 10 a negative. 8 times negative 10 is negative 80. That works. 8 plus negative 10 is negative 2. That works. So my factors are x plus 8 and x minus 10. And I set that equal to 0. I do my t-time. And I get x plus 8 equal to 0. X minus 10 equal to 0. And I just solve both of these mini equations. How do I get rid of my plus 8? I take away 8. So I get x equals negative 8. How do I get rid of my minus 10? I add 10. So I get x equals 10. So for this equation, I have two solutions, negative 8 and 10. All right, let's go on to difference of two squares factoring. So this is actually type 3, not type 4. My apologies. I don't know how to count. So the way difference of two squares factoring works is we just do our difference of two squares factoring. I ask myself, what makes n squared? Well, if you want, I can go back to my factoring using dots note, and I can copy and paste this. 1 second. Good. Oh no. I'll put it here. Okay, so in our first example, we have n squared minus 64 equals 0. Remember, whenever you have dots factoring, you have two terms, there's a minus, and everything's a perfect square. So I'm going to go ahead and make my two sets of parentheses. It's going to be equal to 0. I have to ask myself, what makes n squared? Well, it's an n and an n. I have my plus minus. And now I have to ask myself, what makes 64? If I look at my chart, it's an 8, because 8 times 8 is 64. So that's how I factor. Now I got to set both of these factors equal to 0. So I do n plus 8 equal to 0, n minus 8 equal to 0. How do I get rid of my plus 8? I subtract 8. So I get n equals negative 8. How do I get rid of my minus 8? I add 8. So I get n equals 8. So for this example, I get two solutions, positive 8 and negative 8. Number 2, is it equal to 0? No, it's not equal to 0. It's 4x squared equal to 25. So I have to ask myself, how do I get this 25 over here? If I look, it's positive, so I'm going to subtract 25 from both sides of my equation. So I get 4x squared minus 25 equal to 0. This is now a dots factoring. I do my two sets of parentheses right away. I ask myself, what makes 4? 2 and 2. What makes x squared? X and x. Plus minus. And then what makes 25? If I look, it's 5 and 5. So I have 2x plus 5 equal to 0 and 2x minus 5 equal to 0. So it becomes a two-step equation. How do I get rid of my plus 5? I subtract 5. So I get 2x equals negative 5. And then I divide both sides by 2. So I get x equals negative 5 over 2. And then here I do the exact same procedure, but instead of subtracting 5, I'm going to add 5 to both sides of my equation. Okay, so I'm going to add 5. So add 5, add 5. I get 2x equals 5. And then divide both sides by 2. Divide by 2, divide by 2, and I get x equals 5 over 2. And that's your final answer. Now our next example, I have 49x squared equals 121. Again, it's not equal to 0, so I have to get rid of my 121 by subtracting. So I have 49x squared minus 121. And that's going to be equal to 0. So I have to ask myself, what makes 49? 7 and 7. So do your two sets of parentheses. So 49 I can break apart into 7 and 7. X squared I break apart into x and x. Plus minus. And then to make 121, I do 11 and 11. Now I set both of these factors equal to 0. So 7x plus 11 equals 0. And 7x minus 11 equals 0. Subtract 11. 7x is equal to negative 11, and then I divide by a 7. So I get x equals negative 11 over 7. And then here, instead of subtracting 11, I add 11 to both sides of my equation. And then divide by a 7. And that's your final answer. If you have any questions, email myself, Miss Townsend, or Miss Jimenez. Have a great day, ladies.